It's February 8th, 2012, and Tim Schafer, a much beloved LucasArts adventure game developer from the 90s, breaks from industry convention to ask money from the gamers directly to make a new adventure game through the crowdfunding platform Kickstarter. Citing that the past publisher-centric model did not see this as a viable project to fund, Schafer was instead selling the game upfront to the gamers that wanted it, and those sales would fund the development. Asking only for $400,000, though one of the largest asking prices on Kickstarter at the time, backers shattered the goal by raising $3.3 million over 30 days. As one of the most successful Kickstarter projects at the time, the theoretical funding plan became proof that there was a market for video games on Kickstarter and that games could be crowdfunded. Developers past, present, and future began to swamp into crowdfunding. The lore of Schafer's financial success had many dreaming of their own Cinderella story, but you lived and died on your pitch to the market. You had to sell it. If people couldn't get excited about it, you wouldn't get a dime if you fell under your crowdfunding goal. You made about 70% of your money in the first 2 days, and the last day of the funding drive. A bad first day, you might be shit out of luck. A ghost town on the last day, you might come close but fail. And even if you made your goal, you could find yourself unable to produce the promised game in part or completely. Game development is hard. Thankfully, point-and-click adventure games, turn-based strategies, RTSs, platformers, genres left neglected, found new life in this market. However, one genre was missing from the Kickstarter gold rush: space sims. So the space sim genre comes from the Star Wars and Battlestar Galactica fantasy of being Starbuck or Luke Skywalker flying around in spaceships and blowing stuff up. The Top Gun fantasy before Top Gun. The Last Starfighter, the hero of the galaxy. Early in the genre, Vector Graphics made space sim games a good choice for the early 80s, but they were mostly limited. However, Elite, a pioneer in the genre, embraced vector graphics and delivered the Han Solo smuggler and space trucker fantasy with several entries. In the 90s, space sims took off with Wing Commander, X-Wing, Descent, Free Space, and Battlecruiser. But at the turn of the millennium, after our last few attempts, the large publishers stepped away from the fringe genres like space sims in pursuit of the new full 3D FPS games for their novelty and success. Without promotion from publishers, developers found it hard to sell their games at big box stores, essentially the only storefront available at the time, and while they were still being made, space sims essentially slipped into a genre coma. What was left were a few separate communities online surrounding one of the many last releases, trying to make use of the parts abandoned to keep themselves entertained. We fast forward to October 10th, 2012, and Chris Roberts steps back onto the stage after a decade-long hiatus from the video games industry. He announces Squadron 42 and its companion game Star Citizen, two styles of space sims rolled into one package for release in 2014. It is to be crowdfunded independently for the cost of $2 million, one of the highest prices asked for any crowdfunded game project at the time. Within minutes, during the presentation itself, the servers of Roberts' own crowdfunding site crashed from massive traffic and would not be functional for a week.
Oh. Apparently, our site is having millions of hits and is overloaded, so everyone out there, please be patient, because it's hopefully, I think it's worth it, but it's great that there's so many people interested in it.
Lost time is lost funding. Roberts sets up a side Kickstarter for the game to keep funding coming in while rebuilding the private site. By the end of October, Roberts collected $2.5 million, a success in and of itself, but there was still time left. Finally, on November 19th at about 10 a.m. CST, the cutoff was given and a total of $6.2 million had been raised. Roberts managed to catch lightning in a jar. But just what is Star Citizen? What makes it so unique in not just the video game industry, but for crowdfunding as a whole? So the initial bang of the presentation was Squadron 42, a familiar Top Gun in space with pseudo-historical narrative and lore, something Chris Roberts is well known for in his previous works. It's a single-player experience with bits of arcadey flight sim action and a lot of space opera drama sandwiching it. It wasn't the current normal, but it wasn't the big dream. That was Star Citizen, the multiplayer component of this double whammy. The pitch for that was playing online with friends, pilot ships together in squadrons or multi-crew ships, run generated missions together, be pirates or mercenaries, and generally muck about in a brand new universe. The real kicker was that Roberts not only had the sizzle reel to show off, but a separate live demo he played on the podium to demonstrate his idea, a tactile example of what Roberts wanted to make. That was the kindling that sparked a flurry of dreams and a fury of pledges. This should have been the end of it. A game is funded, then developed, then released. The world goes on, and everybody involved is happy. Well, hold up. Let's look back at Tim Schafer's own Kickstarter. The inconvenient truth of the video games industry is that projections of cost and workload are routinely underestimated. Originally, the Kickstarter game Schafer had, Broken Age, was slated for release in October of the same year. But once production values ramped up, that date was pushed back to second quarter 2013, and further back again to September 2013. Even with $3.3 million in hand, Schafer and his development house Double Fine found themselves slowly being cornered by dwindling funds and a backlog of work. Reevaluation of the project dictated they had to change release plans, or face running out of money well before the game was finished. So they split the game in half, releasing Part 1 in January 2014, and taking the sales to fund development of Part 2, which also saw delays and didn't ship until April of 2015. What we learn from this example is that a veteran of the industry in the genre he or she is experienced in, and a passionate workforce can have trouble delivering on what was comparatively an easy game to make, even when you give them more than what they asked for. To Schafer and Double Fine's credit, they shipped what they promised, all while allowing a documentary crew to film them at their highs and lows, and even their rawest. And here we are with Star Citizen, over 5 years and $170 million later. What began with a bright star has collapsed onto itself and left a black hole sucking in money and spitting out hype. How did this happen? We'll have to fall deeper down the rabbit hole and examine the man, the myth, the legend that everyone pins their dreams upon.
I literally heard him say, make that pixel blue, not green.